The rain had not stopped for 3 days. Kang Do-yun moved through the broken streets like a ghost, his boots splashing in the dirty water that filled every crack and hole in the old road. The city had been dead for 20 years now. Ever since the third collapse, no one lived here except people like him. Scavengers, survivors, people who had nowhere else to go. Do-yun was 32 years old, but he looked older. His face was thin and tired. His eyes were dark and careful, always watching, always expecting danger. He carried a heavy bag on his back filled with medicine bottles and bandages. He had found them in an old hospital that morning. Good find. These supplies would keep him alive for another few months. He stopped near a broken building and listened. The rain made everything hard to hear. But Do-yun had learned to listen carefully. In this dead city, sounds meant danger. Sounds meant other scavengers or wild dogs, or worse things that came out at night. But tonight, the sound that came was different from anything he had ever heard. It started as a low whistle, far away in the sky. Do-yun looked up through the rain. At first, he saw nothing but dark clouds. Then a light appeared, bright orange like fire, cutting through the sky faster than any plane he had ever seen. The whistle became a roar. The ground started to shake. Do-yun threw himself behind a concrete wall just as the thing crashed. The impact was like a bomb. Windows that had survived 20 years of abandonment finally shattered. Car alarms that had been silent for decades suddenly screamed to life. A wave of heat washed over him, and for a moment, he could not breathe. Then silence. Only the rain and the distant echo of falling debris. Do-hyun waited. His heart was beating fast, but his hands were steady. He had seen many strange things in his life. He had survived the collapse. He had watched his younger sister die in his arms because he could not find medicine in time. After that, nothing really scared him anymore. Nothing made him feel much of anything. He stood up slowly and looked toward the crash site. A tall building, already half destroyed, now had a massive hole in its side. Smoke and steam rose from the wound in the structure. Something was glowing inside. Something that was not fire. Every smart part of his brain told him to run, to go back to his shelter and hide. Whatever had fallen from the sky was not human, and not human meant dangerous. But Do-yun did not run. He thought about the ships he had seen in old movies as a child. He thought about the stories people told about visitors from other worlds. And he thought about the fact that if something dangerous had arrived, running would not save him anyway. He walked toward the building. The inside was worse than the outside. Metal beams hung from the ceiling like broken bones. The floor was covered in dust and glass. And in the center of the destruction sat something that made Do-hyun stop breathing. It was a ship, but not like any ship he had seen in pictures or movies. This thing looked alive. Its surface was smooth in some places and rough in others, like skin and scales mixed together. Parts of it seemed to be made of metal, but other parts looked organic, like the shell of some giant sea creature. Blue light pulsed from cracks in its hull, like blood glowing in the dark. Do-yun approached slowly. His medical training told him to look for survivors. His survival training told him to look for weapons. He did both. He found the entrance by accident. A section of the hull had been torn open by the crash, creating a hole just big enough for a man to climb through. The blue light inside was brighter here. He could hear something, a sound like breathing, but wrong. Too slow, too deep. He climbed inside. The interior of the ship was warm and wet. The walls curved around him like the inside of a living creature. Strange symbols glowed on surfaces he could not identify. The air smelled like metal and flowers, a combination that made no sense. And then he saw her. She was lying on the floor near what might have been a control panel. She was tall, much taller than any human. Her body was covered in scales that shifted color as he watched, moving from deep purple to bright silver and back again. She had 4 arms, 2 larger ones, and 2 smaller ones folded against her chest. Her face was almost human in shape, but her features were sharper, more elegant. And she had 4 eyes, 2 large ones where human eyes would be, and 2 smaller ones above them on her forehead. She was beautiful. The thought came to Do-hyun without permission, and he pushed it away. More importantly, she was hurt. A piece of her own ship had broken off during the crash and pierced her side. Blue liquid pooled beneath her, spreading slowly across the floor. The same blue that glowed in the ship's systems. Her blood. Her eyes opened, all four of them focused on Do-yoon at once, and he felt a pressure in his mind, like someone was pushing against his thoughts. She spoke, but the words were sounds he could not understand. Her voice was like music and thunder mixed together. Her tone, however, was clear. She was threatening him. One of her large hands rose, and Do-yoon saw energy gathering at her fingertips. Sparks of light that crackled and grew. He should have run. Any normal person would have run. Instead, Do-yoon slowly raised his hands. He showed her his palms, empty of weapons. Then, moving very carefully, he reached into his bag and pulled out his medkit. He held it up so she could see it. The energy at her fingertips flickered, but did not fade. Do-yoon pointed at her wound. Then he pointed at the medkit. Then he pointed at himself and made a gesture like wrapping a bandage. She stared at him. The pressure in his mind grew stronger, almost painful. He felt like she was trying to read his thoughts, to understand what he was. He did not look away. He did not beg. He simply waited. After a long moment, the energy faded from her hand. Her arm dropped to the floor. Her four eyes continued to watch him, suspicious and confused, but no longer ready to kill. Do-yoon took that as permission. He knelt beside her and opened his medkit. His hands moved with the confidence of years of training. He had been a military medic once, before the collapse. He had saved hundreds of lives on battlefields and in hospitals. He had also failed to save the one life that mattered most, but he would not think about his sister now. Now there was only the patient. He looked at the wound. The metal shard was deep, but it had missed what he guessed were vital organs. The bleeding was slow and steady. If she were human, he would say she had a chance. He reached toward the wound, and her hands shot out faster than he could see. Her fingers wrapped around his wrist with crushing strength. Her scales were warm against his skin. Her four eyes burned into his. Do-yoon did not pull away. He did not struggle. He just looked at her and said the first words he had spoken to another being in almost a year. "I am a medic. Let me help." She did not understand his words, but somehow she understood him. Her grip loosened. Her hand fell away, and Kang Do-yoon began to work. Do-yoon worked through the night. The alien woman watched him with all four of her eyes, never looking away, never fully trusting. But she did not stop him either. She let his hands move over her wound, cleaning the blue blood, carefully removing the metal shard, pressing bandages against her torn flesh. Her blood was warm, warmer than human blood. It glowed faintly in the darkness of the crashed ship, like liquid starlight. When it touched his skin, it tingled, but it did not burn. He worked carefully, using every skill he had learned in his years as a medic. Sometime during the night, something changed. A soft clicking sound came from a device near her head. Then suddenly she spoke again. But this time, he understood her. "You should not be touching me." Her voice was still strange, still like music and thunder, but the words were clear. Some kind of translation technology, Do-yoon realized. It had finally learned his language. "You were dying," he said without stopping his work. "You still might die if this gets infected. You do not understand." Her voice was cold. "Among my people, touch is not given freely. To touch a queen without permission is death. To touch a queen with permission is something else entirely, something sacred." Do-hyun paused for just a moment. Then he continued wrapping the bandage around her middle section. "I am not one of your people," he said simply, "and you were dying." She made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a growl of frustration. "You are either very brave or very stupid human." "Probably stupid," Do-hyun agreed, "but you are still alive. That is what matters." She fell silent after that. He finished his work, tied off the bandage, and sat back on his heels. His hands were covered in her glowing blue blood. He was exhausted. His whole body ached from hours of careful work. "It is done," he said. "You need to rest now. Do not move too much, or the wound will open again." She looked at him for a long time. Her four eyes studied his face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Finally, she spoke again. "I am Yara, Supreme Matriarch of the Valorian Dominion. I rule over 700 worlds and command fleets that could burn this planet to ash in moments. She paused. Who are you, human? Why did you help me? Do-Hyun wiped his hands on a piece of cloth from his bag. My name is Kang Do-Hyun. I am nobody, just a man trying to survive in a dead city. He looked at her wound, checking the bandage one more time. And I helped you because you needed help. That is all. Yera's eyes narrowed. That is all? You expect me to believe that? You want nothing from me? No reward, no power, no promise of protection? No. Then you are a fool. Do-Hyun almost smiled. Almost. Maybe. But I have been called worse things. He stood up and stretched his tired muscles. Outside the ship, the rain had finally stopped. Weak morning light was starting to filter through the hole in the building. He needed to move. Staying in one place too long was dangerous. Other scavengers might have seen the crash. They would come looking for valuable things to steal. We cannot stay here, he said. Other humans will come. Not all of them are friendly. Can you walk? Yera tried to sit up and immediately gasped in pain. Her smaller arms clutched at her bandaged side. Her larger arms pushed against the floor, trying to lift her body, but she was too weak. Without thinking, Do-Hyun moved to her side and put his arm around her shoulders. He helped her sit up, supporting her weight against his body. She was heavier than she looked. Her scales were smooth and warm against his skin. She froze. Her whole body went stiff. Her 4 eyes went wide. She looked at his arm around her shoulders like it was a weapon pointed at her heart. You are touching me again, she whispered. Do-Hyun paused. Yes, you cannot stand alone. You will fall. You do not understand. Her voice was different now, not cold anymore. Something else, something he could not identify. Among my people, this kind of touch, it means something. It creates a bond, a connection. I am just helping you walk. That is not how it works for us. She was still stiff, still frozen, but she was not pushing him away. For 200 years, I have ruled my empire. I have been worshipped. I have been feared, but no one has touched me like this. No one has held me simply to help me stand. Do-Hyun was quiet for a moment. He thought about her words. He thought about what it would be like to live for 200 years without anyone ever just helping you, without anyone treating you like a person instead of a queen. It sounded lonely, terribly, deeply lonely. Well, he said finally, I am touching you now, and I am not asking for anything. I am not worshiping you or fearing you. I am just helping you walk. Is that allowed? She did not answer for a long time. Her body slowly relaxed against his. Her scales seemed to grow warmer where they touched his skin. I do not know, she admitted quietly. Nothing like this has ever happened before. They made their way out of the ship slowly. Every step was difficult. Yera was weak from blood loss, and Do-Hyun was tired from a night without sleep. But together they managed. They climbed through the hole in the hull. They picked their way through the debris of the crashed building. They stepped out into the gray morning light of the dead city. Yera looked around at the broken buildings, the empty streets, the plants growing through cracks in the concrete. What happened here, she asked. War, Do-Hyun said simply. Disease, collapse, the usual things that happen when humans are stupid. Your people destroyed themselves? Almost, not completely. There are still some of us left. Hiding, surviving, waiting for things to get better. He paused. They might never get better. Yera was silent. She leaned against him as they walked, her weight pressing against his side. He guided her through the streets he knew so well, avoiding the dangerous areas, staying in the shadows. His shelter was not far, an old apartment building that had not fully collapsed. The basement was dry and safe. He had been living there for 3 years. When they finally reached it, he helped her down the stairs and laid her on the mat he used as a bed. She was breathing hard. The walk had taken a lot out of her. Do-Hyun gave her water from his supply. She drank it carefully, her strange mouth having trouble with the human container. He watched her, making sure she did not choke. When she finished drinking, she looked at him again with those 4 strange eyes. You saved my life, and she said, you carried me to safety. You gave me your water and your bed. Why? Do-yun sat down on the cold floor. He was too tired to think of a clever answer. So he just told the truth. Because you were hurt, because you needed help, because I am a medic, and that is what medics do. He paused. And because I have seen too many people die, I did not want to see another one, even if she is not human. Yara stared at him. Then slowly she reached out with one of her smaller hands. She touched his arm gently, her fingers tracing over his skin. Your people, she said softly. They are strange. You are strange. I have ruled an empire for 200 years. I have met thousands of species across hundreds of worlds, but I have never met anyone like you. Do-yun did not know what to say, so he said nothing. After a moment, Yara pulled her hand back. She closed her 4 eyes. Do it once more, she whispered. He frowned. Do what? Touch me, like you did before, when you were fixing my wound. Her voice was barely audible. It felt different. It felt warm, not painful, not political, not sacred, just warm. Do-yun hesitated. He thought about what she had said about her people, about touch being death or bonding, about how no one had ever just helped her. Then he reached out and placed his hand gently on her arm. Just resting there, warm and simple and human. Yara made a soft sound. Her scales shimmered. Her body relaxed. And for the first time in 200 years, the supreme matriarch of the Valorian Dominion fell asleep feeling safe. 3 days passed. Yara grew stronger with each day, but she was still too weak to travel far. Do-yun took care of her like he had taken care of wounded soldiers in the old days. He changed her bandages. He brought her food and water. He made sure she rested. At first, they did not talk much. Yara was proud, and she was not used to needing help from anyone. Do-yun was quiet by nature, and he had forgotten how to have conversations after living alone for so long. But slowly, as the days passed, they began to share small pieces of their stories. Yara told him about the Valorian Dominion. It was an empire that stretched across thousands of star systems. Her people had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They were powerful, advanced, and feared by every other species. But they were also alone. Their strict rules about touch and connection meant that even families did not show affection. Even lovers did not hold hands. The only physical contact allowed was in battle or in the sacred bonding ceremony between royal mates. I have been queen for 200 years, Yara said one evening. I have ordered the destruction of planets. I have ended wars with a single command. But I have never had someone hold my hand just because I was tired. Do-yun listened quietly. He understood loneliness better than most. In return, he told her about his life, about the world before the collapse when cities were full of people and lights and noise, about his time as a military medic, saving lives on battlefields that seemed endless, and about his sister Yunbi, who had been his only family. She was sick, he said, his voice flat and empty. After the collapse, there was no medicine, no hospitals, no help. I searched everywhere, but I could not find what she needed. He paused. She died in my arms. She was only 19 years old. Yara was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out and touched his hand. It was a small gesture, clumsy and uncertain. She did not know how to comfort someone. She had never learned. But Do-yun understood what she was trying to do. And that was enough. On the 4th day, everything changed. Yara was finally strong enough to walk on her own. She moved around the small basement shelter, examining Do-yun's supplies and tools with curiosity. She asked questions about human technology, about their history, about their strange custom of cooking food over fire instead of eating it raw. Then her translator device made a sharp beeping sound. Her 4 eyes went wide. They found me, she whispered. Do-yun was on his feet immediately. Who found you? Your people. No, worse. Her voice was tight with fear. The Varketh. They are the ones who attacked my ship. They have been hunting my kind for centuries. They must have followed my signal through the wormhole. How many? Yara closed her eyes and listened to her device. A small hunting party, 3 or 4 warriors. They are already on this planet. They are tracking my location. Do-yun moved to his supply corner and started gathering weapons. He had a knife, an old pistol with limited ammunition, and some homemade explosives he had made for emergencies. not much against an enemy from the stars. "What are these Varketh like?" he asked. "Large, strong, covered in bone armor that can stop most weapons. They hunt for sport and for honor. Killing a Valorian queen would bring them great glory." She looked at him with something close to despair. "You should run, Doyun. Leave this place. Leave me. They will not care about you if you are not near me." Doyun checked his pistol and put it in his belt. "No, you do not understand. These creatures have destroyed entire armies. You are one human with primitive weapons. You cannot fight them." "Probably not." He picked up his knife and strapped it to his leg. "But I am not going to leave you alone. I am a medic. I do not abandon my patients." Yera stared at him like he had lost his mind. "You will die." "Everyone dies." His voice was calm. "The only question is what you do before that happens." Before she could argue more, another sound reached them. Not from her device this time, but from outside. The rumble of engines in the distance. Human engines. Doyun climbed to a window and looked out carefully. He saw vehicles moving through the streets. Military vehicles. Old, patched together from spare parts, but still functional. Soldiers in worn uniforms walked beside them, carrying rifles and scanning the ruins. "More trouble," he muttered. "The Korean United Forces. They must have seen your ship crash. They are searching for it." "Are they dangerous?" "Depends on who is leading them." He watched the soldiers for a moment. "They are survivors like me, but some of them are not friendly to strangers, and they definitely will not be friendly to aliens." Yera moved to stand beside him. She looked at the human soldiers with curiosity. "So small," she murmured. "So fragile. How have your people survived this long?" "Stubbornness," Do-hyun said. "And luck. Mostly stubbornness." The soldiers were getting closer, and beyond them, somewhere in the city, the Varketh hunters were also closing in. They were trapped between two dangers, with nowhere to run. Do-hyun made a decision. "Stay here," he told Yera. "Stay hidden. Do not come out no matter what you hear." "What are you going to do?" "I am going to lead the soldiers away from this building, and I am going to find out where the Varketh are." He checked his supplies one more time. "If I do not come back before nightfall, try to find your way back to your ship. Maybe you can repair it enough to send a signal to your people." Yera grabbed his arm with one of her large hands. Her grip was strong, but not painful. Her 4 eyes burned into his. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. "Why risk your life for me? I am nothing to you. I am not your people. I am not your family. I am just a stranger who fell from the sky." Doyun looked at her for a long moment. He thought about his sister, dying in his arms because he could not save her. He thought about all the years since then, living alone, caring about nothing, waiting to die without really living. Then he thought about Yera, about the way she had looked when she asked him to touch her again, about the loneliness in her voice when she talked about her 200 years as queen, about the small, clumsy ways she had tried to comfort him when he talked about Yumbi. "You are not nothing," he said quietly. "You are my patient, and I do not lose patience if I can help it." He pulled away from her grip and moved toward the door. "Do-hyun," she called after him. He stopped but did not turn around. "Be careful, She hesitated. "I would not want to lose you either." He did not respond. He simply opened the door and slipped out into the ruins. The hunt had begun. The soldiers were easy to avoid. Do-hyun knew this city better than anyone. He knew every broken building, every hidden passage, every shadow deep enough to hide in. He moved through the ruins like a ghost, watching the soldiers search and making sure they moved away from his shelter. But the Varketh were different. He found evidence of them near the old river. Footprints in the mud that were not human. Deep gouges in concrete walls where claws had scraped. And worst of all, a body. One of the soldiers from the search party, torn apart and left on the ground like a piece of garbage. Do-hyun looked at the body and felt cold fear settle in his stomach. Whatever these creatures were, they were not just hunters. They were monsters. He heard a sound behind him and spun around, knife in hand. He saw movement in the shadows. Something large. Something wrong. 2 eyes glowed in the darkness. Then 2 more. Then 2 more after that. 6 eyes. 3 hunters. The Varketh had found him. The Varketh stepped out of the shadows, and Do-hyun understood immediately why Yera had been so afraid. They were massive. Each one stood at least 8 feet tall, with bodies covered in thick plates of bone-like armor. Their heads were flat and wide, filled with rows of sharp teeth. Their arms ended in claws that looked like they could tear through steel, and their eyes, 6 in total between the 3 of them, glowed with a cruel intelligence that was worse than animal hunger. They looked at Do-hyun the way a cat looks at a mouse. One of them made a sound, a rumbling growl that the air itself seemed to shake. Words came from somewhere, translated by some hidden device. Small creature. Soft creature. Where is the queen? Do-hyun did not answer. His mind was racing, calculating distances, looking for escape routes, trying to remember everything he knew about fighting enemies bigger than himself. The answer to most of those calculations was the same. He was going to die. But dying did not mean failing. Dying just meant making the enemy pay for their victory. He threw his knife at the nearest Varketh and ran. The knife bounced off the creature's armor without leaving a mark, but it bought him half a second of confusion. He sprinted into the ruins, ducking through a hole in a wall that was too small for the hunters to follow. Behind him, he heard crashing sounds as they smashed through the concrete to chase him. He led them through the maze of broken buildings, using every trick he knew. He doubled back, he climbed, he crawled through spaces that his smaller body could fit, but theirs could not. He was buying time. He was leading them away from Yera. But the Varketh were not stupid. They split up, trying to surround him. They knew this was his territory, but they were patient. They were hunters. They had done this before. Do-hyun found himself trapped in what had once been a parking garage. 3 levels of concrete and rusted cars with only 2 exits. The Varketh blocked both of them. He pulled out his pistol, 8 bullets, against creatures with natural armor. The first hunter came at him fast, faster than anything that big should be able to move. Do-hyun fired twice, aiming for the eyes. The first shot missed. The second hit, and the creature screamed in pain, clutching its face. But it did not die. It just got angry. Do-hyun ran up a ramp to the second level, firing behind him to slow the chase. He had 6 bullets left. 2 hunters still uninjured, 1 wounded but still dangerous. He reached the second level and found what he was looking for. An old car, rusted and broken, but still containing what he needed. He pulled open the fuel tank and grabbed the container of homemade explosives from his bag. The second hunter appeared at the top of the ramp. It roared in charge. Do-hyun threw the explosive into the pool of leaked fuel beneath the car and ran. The explosion was bigger than he expected. The whole level shook. Fire erupted behind him, and he felt heat on his back as he threw himself through a window to the level below. He landed hard, rolling across broken glass, feeling pain in his shoulder and his legs. When he looked up, the second hunter was on fire. It was screaming, thrashing, trying to put out the flames that had caught on the gaps in its armor. Within seconds, it stopped moving. 2 down, 1 to go, and he had 4 bullets left. The third Varketh appeared from the darkness. It was the biggest of the 3, and it was looking at Do-hyun with something new in its eyes. Not just hunger anymore. Respect. "You fight well for a soft creature," it growled. "The queen chose a strange protector." "I am not her protector," Do-hyun said, raising his gun with shaking hands. "I am her medic." The hunter laughed, a terrible sound like rocks grinding together. "Then you will die like a medic, soft and useless." It charged. Do-hyun fired. 1 shot hit the shoulder, 1 hit the chest. Both bounced off armor. He had 2 bullets left. The hunter reached him and swatted the gun from his hand. Pain exploded through his arm. He felt claws rake across his chest, tearing through his clothes and skin. Blood, red human blood, splattered across the concrete. He fell. The hunter stood over him, raising 1 massive foot to crush his skull. Gunfire erupted from somewhere above. Bullets rained down on the Varketh, dozens of them, too many to count. The hunter turned, surprised, and Do-hyun saw soldiers pouring into the garage. Human soldiers. The Korean United Forces. A woman's voice shouted orders. "Concentrate fire on the joints. The armor is weakest there." The soldiers obeyed. They were organized, disciplined, and they were not running away even though they faced something from their worst nightmares. Bullets found gaps in the hunter's armor. Blue-green blood began to flow. The Varketh roared and charged at the soldiers. It killed two of them with a single swipe of its claws, but the others did not break. They kept firing, kept fighting, kept pushing forward. A young soldier, barely more than a boy, ran straight at the hunter with something in his hands. Doyun recognized it. Another homemade explosive, bigger than his. "Kim, no!" the woman commander screamed. The soldier jumped at the hunter, wrapped his arms around its neck, and triggered the explosive. The blast threw Do-hyun against a wall. His ears rang. His vision blurred. When he could see again, the hunter was down. So was the young soldier who had sacrificed himself. The woman commander ran to Do-hyun and knelt beside him. She was older, maybe 40, with a hard face and tired eyes. But there was kindness there too, buried deep. "Can you walk?" she asked. "I think so." Do-hyun tried to sit up and gasped at the pain in his chest. "Your soldier, the one who—" Private Kim Ji-won. He was 19 years old. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. He knew what he was doing. 19. The same age as Yumbi when she died. The commander helped him stand. "I am Lieutenant Bae Soo-jin. We have been tracking these things since yesterday. We found their ship. We found what they did to our patrols." She looked at him closely. "You survived against 3 of them." "How?" "I got lucky, and I know this city." Soo-jin nodded slowly. "We heard them talking before they attacked. They were looking for a queen, an alien queen." Her eyes hardened. "Do you know anything about that?" Do-hyun thought about Yera, hiding in his shelter, scared and alone, counting on him to come back. "Yes," he said. "I know where she is." Soo-jin's hand moved to her weapon. "Then you will take us to her." "No." Do-hyun met her eyes without fear. "First you will listen to what I have to say, and then you will decide if you want to help us or kill us. But I will not take you to her until I know which one it will be." For a long moment Soo-jin stared at him. Then slowly, she moved her hand away from her gun. "You have courage," when she said, "or you are very stupid." Do-hyun almost smiled. "People keep telling me that." Soo-jin looked at the dead hunter, at the destroyed garage, at the body of the young soldier who had given his life. Then she looked back at Do-hyun. "Talk," she said. "I am listening." And somewhere in the ruins, in a small basement shelter, Yera waited and watched the sky, hoping that the strange human who had touched her wound with gentleness would find his way back to her. Do-hyun returned to the shelter just before sunset. He was wounded, tired, and covered in blood, both human and alien. But he was alive. Yera rushed to him the moment he came through the door. Her 4 eyes scanned his body, taking in every cut and bruise. Her hands reached out, then stopped, uncertain. "You are hurt," she said. "Let me see." "It looks worse than it is." Do-hyun sat down heavily on the floor. "The hunters are dead, all 3 of them." Yera's eyes widened. "You killed 3 Varketh? Alone?" "Not alone. Human soldiers found me. They helped." He closed his eyes, remembering the young soldier who had sacrificed himself. They lost people. Good people. Yera was quiet for a moment. Then she did something that surprised them both. She knelt beside him and began to tend to his wounds. Her movements were clumsy and unpracticed, but she tried. She cleaned the cuts on his chest with water from his supplies. She wrapped bandages around his injuries with her 4 hands. She did what he had done for her. "I do not know how to do this properly," she admitted. "My people do not care for each other this way." "You are doing fine," Do-hyun said. "Better than fine." They sat together in the growing darkness. Yera finished with his wounds and sat back, looking at him with an expression he could not read. "The soldiers who helped you," she said, "will they come here?" "Tomorrow. I made a deal with their commander, Lieutenant Bae Soo-jin. She is suspicious of you, but she is not unreasonable. I told her that you were not here to hurt us, that you needed help." He paused. "I told her that you were worth protecting. And she believed you?" "She lost soldiers fighting the Varketh. She saw what those creatures were capable of. I think she understands that there are worse things in the universe than you." Yera made a soft sound that might have been a laugh. That is a low standard for trust. In this world, it is enough. They did not light a fire that night. It was too dangerous, and they were both too tired. Instead, they sat in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the dead city around them. After a long silence, Yera spoke again. Her voice was different now, softer, more vulnerable. I have been thinking about what you said, about your sister, Yunbi. Do-Yun felt something tighten in his chest. He did not like talking about Yunbi. It hurt too much, but he did not stop Yera from speaking. You blame yourself for her death, Yera continued. You believe that if you had been better, faster, smarter, you could have saved her. You carry that guilt every day, and it has turned you into someone who cannot let anyone else die. Even a stranger from the stars. He did not answer. He did not need to. She was right. I understand that feeling, Yera said quietly. I carry guilt too. Not for one person, but for millions. For billions. Do-Yun opened his eyes and looked at her. What do you mean? Yera was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with old pain. I told you that my people do not touch each other, that we are isolated, alone, even in families. I did not tell you why. She paused. It was not always this way. 1,000 years ago, my people were different. We touched freely. We loved openly. We were warm. What changed? I changed it. Her four eyes closed. There was a plague, a disease that spread through touch. Millions of my people died. Entire worlds were emptied. The empire was collapsing. Her voice cracked. I was young then, not yet queen, but close to power. I was the one who proposed the solution. No more touching, no more closeness. We would survive through isolation. Do-Yun listened without interrupting. The plan worked, Yera continued. The plague was contained. The empire survived. And when I became queen, I made the rules permanent. I told my people that touch was dangerous, that closeness was weakness, that we had to remain apart to remain strong. She opened her eyes and looked at him. I saved billions of lives, but I also destroyed something precious. I made my people cold. I made them lonely. I made them like me. You did what you had to do, Do-Hyun said. Perhaps, but I have lived with the consequences for 200 years. I have watched generations grow up without knowing the warmth of a parent's embrace. I have seen lovers stand apart, afraid to hold hands. I have ruled an empire of the isolated. She reached out and touched his hand, her scales warm against his skin. And then I crashed on this planet, and a human touched my wound with gentleness. And I felt something I had not felt in 1,000 years. What? Connection. Her voice was barely a whisper. Simple, pure connection. Not sacred, not political. Just one being caring for another. Do-Yun turned his hand over and held hers. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything to both of them. My sister used to say something, he said quietly. She used to say that the universe is very dark and very cold, that the only way to survive is to find someone to be warm with. I thought she was being childish. I thought strength meant being alone, being hard, being cold. He paused. I was wrong. She was right. She was always right. They sat together in the darkness, holding hands, saying nothing. Two broken people from different worlds, finding something they had both lost long ago. After a while, Yera spoke again. When I return to my empire, I do not know what will happen. My people will see me as contaminated. They will see my contact with you as a violation of everything we believe. There will be consequences. Do you regret it? She looked at him with all four eyes. In the faint light, they seemed to glow. No, she said. I regret nothing. For the first time in 200 years, I feel like I am not alone. Whatever happens next, I will carry that feeling with me. Do-Hyun squeezed her hand gently. You will never be alone again. Not if I can help it. Yera made that soft sound again, the one that might be laughter or might be tears. You are a strange creature, Kang Do-Hyun. You are small and soft and short-lived, but you are also the bravest being I have ever met. I am not brave. I just do not know when to give up. That is the same thing. They stayed like that through the night, holding hands in the darkness, waiting for the dawn. And for the first time since his sister died, Do-yun felt something other than emptiness in his heart. He felt hope. When morning came, Lieutenant Sujin arrived with her soldiers. She looked at Yera with suspicious eyes, but she did not raise her weapon. She listened as Do-yun explained everything. Who Yera was, why she had come, what the Varketh wanted, and what would happen if more hunters arrived. When he finished, Sujin was quiet for a long time. "So you are telling me," she said slowly, "that we have an alien queen hiding in our city, and that her empire might either protect us or destroy us, depending on how we treat her." "Yes." Sujin looked at Yera. "And you? What do you want?" Yera stood tall, her scales shimmering in the morning light. She spoke with the voice of a queen, clear and strong and unafraid. "I want to go home. But more than that, I want to remember this world. I want to remember the humans who fought for me, who died for me, who touched me with kindness when my own people would not." She paused. "I want to remember that the universe is not as cold as I thought." Sujin stared at her for a long moment. Then she turned to her soldiers. "Set up a perimeter. We are protecting this location until further notice." She looked back at Yera. "I do not trust you. I do not understand you. But I understand what those hunters were. And I understand that whoever they were hunting must be important." Yera inclined her head. "Thank you, Lieutenant." Sujin grunted. "Do not thank me yet. We are all probably going to die when your people arrive." Do-yun almost smiled. "Then we will die together. That is not the worst way to go." Sujin looked at him like he was crazy. Then she shook her head and walked away to organize her soldiers. Yera turned to Do-hyun. She reached out and touched his face gently, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "You are a remarkable human," she said softly. "I am just a medic." "No." Her four eyes were warm. "You are much more than that." And Do-hyun, for the first time in years, allowed himself to believe she might be right. Do-hyun was outside the shelter when it happened. He was helping the soldiers set up defenses, moving rubble, checking sight lines. The work was hard, but it felt good to be useful. It felt good to be part of something again. Then someone shouted and pointed upward. He looked up and saw them. Ships, hundreds of them, thousands of them. They filled the sky like a second layer of clouds, blocking out the sun, casting shadows over the entire city. They were beautiful and terrible. Massive vessels of purple and silver that looked like they had been grown rather than built. The Valorian Dominion had come for their queen. Lieutenant Sujin ran to Do-hyun's side. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "Are those her people?" "Yes." "Is that good or bad?" Do-hyun watched the ships hang motionless in the sky. "I do not know yet." One ship broke away from the fleet and descended toward the city. It was smaller than the others, but still larger than any building in the ruins. It landed in an open area near the old river, crushing abandoned cars and sending dust clouds billowing into the air. A door opened in the side of the ship. Figures emerged. Valorians, tall and elegant, covered in scales of every color. They moved in perfect formation, carrying weapons that glowed with energy. And at their head walked someone who made even them look small. He was the tallest Valorian Do-hyun had ever seen. His scales were deep black, with veins of gold running through them. His four eyes burned with authority and power. He wore armor that looked like it was made of living metal, shifting and flowing around his body. Yera stepped out of the shelter. She was wearing human clothes now, simple and practical. Nothing like the royal garments she must have worn on her homeworld. But she still stood like a queen. She still moved like a queen. The tall Valorian stopped when he saw her. His face showed emotions that Do-hyun could not read. Relief? Anger? Both? "My queen," his voice carried across the ruins like thunder. "I am Grand Admiral Tai-ho. I refuse to believe you were dead. I searched for you across 1,000 systems. And I find you here on this primitive world, wearing the clothes of lesser beings." Yera did not flinch. "I am glad to see you, Admiral. Your loyalty is noted." "Loyalty?" Tai-ho's voice hardened. "I am loyal to the Dominion. I am loyal to the throne. But what I see here troubles me deeply." His golden eyes moved to Do-hyun, who stood a few steps behind Yera. "Who is this creature? Why does he stand so close to you? Why does he look at you as if he has the right?" "This creature saved my life," Yera said calmly. "He fought enemies who would have killed me. He tended my wounds when I was dying. He protected me when I had no one else. Taeho's eyes narrowed. He touched you. It was not a question. It was an accusation. Yes. The Valorian soldiers behind Taeho stirred. Their weapons hummed with power. The human soldiers raised their own guns, though everyone knew it was useless. One Valorian ship could destroy them all. 1,000 ships could burn the entire planet. My queen, Taeho said slowly, you know our law. Contact with lesser beings is forbidden. Contact with a queen is sacred. This human has violated the most basic principles of our civilization. His voice turned cold. He must be executed. Doyun felt the world slow down. He had known this moment would come. He had known from the beginning that helping Yera might cost him everything. He was not afraid of death. He had been waiting for death for years, but he found that he did not want to die anymore. Not now. Not when he had finally found something worth living for. Yera moved before anyone could react. She stepped in front of Dohyun, placing her body between him and the Valorian soldiers. Her 4 eyes blazed with fury. You will not touch him. Taeho stared at her in disbelief. My queen, you cannot be serious. This is a human, a primitive. He is nothing. He is not nothing. Yera's voice rang out across the ruins. He is the bravest being I have ever met. He is the kindest creature in any galaxy I have known. He looked at a dying alien and saw someone worth saving. He fought monsters from the stars with nothing but courage and stubborn will, and he asked for nothing in return. She paused. Can you say the same, Admiral? Can any of us? Taeho was silent. I have ruled this empire for 200 years, Yera continued. I have seen our people grow cold and distant. I have watched us forget what it means to care for each other. We touch no one. We hold no one. We love no one. And we call this strength. Her voice cracked. It is not strength. It is fear. And I am tired of being afraid. The Valorian soldiers looked at each other, uncertain. This was not how queens were supposed to talk. This was not how the world was supposed to work. Lieutenant Sujin stepped forward. Her voice was steady, even though she was facing beings who could destroy her with a thought. I do not know your laws or your customs, she said, but I know what I saw. I saw this man risk his life for your queen. I saw my soldiers die to protect her. We are not primitive. We are not nothing. We are human. And we do not abandon people who need us. Taeho looked at her with something like surprise. You speak boldly for someone in your position. I speak truth. You can kill me if you want, but it will not change what I said. A long silence stretched across the ruins. The human soldiers stood with their useless weapons. The Valorian soldiers waited with their deadly ones. And in the middle, 2 species faced each other across a gulf of stars and culture and fear. Finally, Taeho spoke again. His voice was different now, quieter, less certain. My queen, if you protect this human, there will be consequences. The council will question your judgment. Your authority will be challenged. Everything you have built could be destroyed. Yera reached back and took Doyun's hand. Her scales were warm against his skin. She held him firmly, without shame, without fear. Then let it be destroyed, she said. I would rather lose an empire than lose my soul. I would rather be removed from power than become the cold, lonely creature I have been for 200 years. She looked at Dohyun, and her 4 eyes were soft. This human taught me something I had forgotten, that we are not meant to be alone, that strength is not isolation, that the warmest thing in the universe is another hand holding yours. Taeho stared at them, at the queen and the human, standing together, hands intertwined. And then slowly, something changed in his golden eyes. The hardness faded, the anger melted away. In its place was something old and buried and almost forgotten. Recognition. My mother used to hold my hand, he said quietly. When I was young, before the laws changed, before touch became forbidden. His voice was barely a whisper. I had forgotten how it felt. Yera's grip on Doyun's hand tightened. We have all forgotten, Admiral, but we can remember. We can change. We can be better than we are. Taeho was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to his soldiers. Lower your weapons. The soldiers hesitated. I said lower your weapons. His voice carried the full authority of a Grand Admiral. The Queen has made her decision. We will respect it. Slowly the soldiers obeyed. Their weapons powered down. The humming faded into silence. Tai-Ho turned back to Yera. The Council will not accept this easily. I know. There will be opposition. There will be those who call you weak, who say you have been corrupted. I know. And you are still willing to do this? To risk everything for this one human? Yera looked at Do-hyun. He looked back at her. Two people from different worlds, holding hands in the ruins of a dead city. Yes, she said. I am willing, because he was willing to risk everything for me. Tai-Ho nodded slowly. He looked at Do-hyun for a long moment, seeing him perhaps for the first time. Not as a primitive or a threat, but as a person. You are a strange creature, he said finally. Small and soft and temporary, but perhaps there is strength in that too. Do-hyun met his eyes without fear. I am just a medic. I do what medics do. Tai-Ho almost smiled. Almost. Come, he said to Yera. Your ship is waiting. There is much to do, and the Empire needs its queen. Yera did not move. I will come, but not alone. She looked at Do-hyun, and in her eyes was a question. He knew what she was asking. He knew what it would mean. Leaving Earth, leaving everything he knew, going to a place where he would be an alien, an outsider, a curiosity at best and an enemy at worst. But he also knew what it would mean to stay, to be alone again, to go back to the empty days and the quiet nights and the slow waiting for death. It was not a difficult choice. Where you go, he said, I will follow. And together they walked toward the ship. The council chamber of the Valorian Dominion was the largest room Do-hyun had ever seen. It could have held entire cities inside it. Thousands of Valorians sat in rows that rose toward a ceiling so high, it disappeared into darkness. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, making the scales of the assembled nobles shimmer like living rainbows. At the center of the chamber stood two figures, Queen Yera and a human medic from a dead city on a primitive world. The council had been arguing for 3 hours. Voices rose and fell in waves of anger, disbelief, and fear. Council members pointed at Do-hyun like he was a disease. They called him words that the translator could not fully convert, but the tone made the meaning clear. Abomination, contamination, corruption. Through it all, Yera stood tall. She answered every accusation with calm authority. She explained what had happened on Earth. She described the Varketh attack, the human soldiers who had died, the bravery of creatures that the Valorians had always dismissed as primitive. Most of the council did not want to listen. They had spent 1,000 years believing they were superior. They had built their entire civilization on the idea that closeness was weakness and isolation was strength. One human and one changed queen were not going to destroy all of that, but some were listening. Do-hyun could see it in their eyes. Young Valorians who looked at their elders with doubt. Old ones who seemed tired of loneliness. A few who watched Yera and Do-hyun standing together and saw something they had never seen before. Hope. The head of the council, an ancient Valorian whose scales had faded to pale gray, raised his hand for silence. When he spoke, his voice was like dry leaves rustling in the wind. We have heard enough arguments. The facts are clear. Our queen has violated the most sacred laws of our people. She has allowed a lesser being to touch her. She has formed a bond with a creature from a primitive world. By our traditions, she should be removed from power and purified. The humans should be executed. A murmur of agreement swept through the chamber. However, the old Valorian continued, traditions can be wrong. Laws can change, and we have not survived for 10,000 years by being too stupid to adapt. The murmur turned to confused silence. The Ancient One looked at Yera. Tell me, my queen, why should we change? Why should we abandon the ways that have kept us safe for 1,000 years? Yera stepped forward. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Because safety is not life. Because surviving is not living. Because we have become so afraid of losing each other that we have lost each other already. She paused, letting her words settle over the chamber. I have ruled this empire for 200 years. I have watched us grow strong and cold. We conquer worlds but cannot hold hands. We command fleets but cannot comfort our children. We have the power to destroy civilizations, but we do not have the courage to say I love you to the people we care about. Her four eyes moved across the chamber, meeting the gaze of council members who looked away in shame or defiance. This human, she continued, gesturing toward Duyun, came from a world that has destroyed itself. His people fought wars that killed billions. His cities are ruins. His species barely survived. Her voice softened. But he found me dying in a crashed ship, and he saved me. Not because he wanted power, not because he expected reward, just because I was hurt and he could help. She reached out and took Doyun's hand. In the great chamber, the small gesture seemed enormous. When was the last time any of us helped someone just because they were hurt? When was the last time we touched someone just because we cared? We have forgotten how. We have taught ourselves that such things are weak, foolish, primitive. Her voice rose. But this primitive creature is stronger than any of us, because he is not afraid to care. He is not afraid to connect. He is not afraid to love. The chamber was silent. Even the most hostile council members had stopped glaring. The Ancient One studied Yera and Do-Yun for a long moment. Then he did something no one expected. He smiled. I remember love, he said softly. I had a mate once, before the plague, before the laws. I held her hand every night until she died. I have not touched another living being in 900 years. His old eyes glistened. I had forgotten how much I missed it. He stood slowly, his ancient body creaking with the effort. The Queen is right. We have survived, but we have not lived. We have been so afraid of death that we have become dead inside. He looked around the chamber. I will not vote to punish her. I will not vote to kill the human. Instead, I will vote to listen, to learn, to remember what we have forgotten. For a moment, nothing happened. Then another council member stood, then another, then a dozen, then hundreds. Not all of them, not even most of them, but enough to matter, enough to start a change. The head counselor looked at Yera. It seems you have won, my queen, for now, but the road ahead will not be easy. Many will resist. Many will hate you for what you are doing. I know, Yera said, but I am not doing this alone. She looked at Do-Hyun, and he looked back at her. In the great chamber of an alien empire, surrounded by beings who could destroy worlds, they stood together, two people who had found each other against all odds. The council session ended. The crowds dispersed. Yera and Do-Hyun walked through the corridors of her palace, past guards who stared and servants who whispered. Neither of them cared. They reached a balcony that overlooked the capital city of the Dominion. Towers of crystal and light stretched toward the stars. Ships moved through the sky like schools of fish. It was beautiful and cold and empty. What happens now? Do-Hyun asked. Yera leaned against the railing. Now we work. I will begin changing the laws. Slowly, carefully, but constantly. I will teach my people that touch is not poison, that closeness is not weakness. It will take years, maybe centuries, but it will happen. And Earth? She turned to him with something like a smile. Earth is now under the protection of the Valorian Dominion. Your people will receive help rebuilding, medicine, technology, resources. They will have to adapt to a larger universe, but they are stubborn. They will survive. Do-Hyun nodded slowly. He thought about Lieutenant Su-Jin and her soldiers. He thought about the dead city and the people still hiding in its ruins. They would have a chance now. A real chance. What about me? He asked quietly. Yera turned to face him fully. She reached out and touched his face with both her large hands. Her scales were warm. Her four eyes were soft. You will stay with me, she said, if you want to. As what? Your medic? Your advisor? Your curiosity? As mine. Her voice was simple and certain. Just mine. The one being in the universe who is allowed to hold my hand whenever he wants. The one who touched my wound with gentleness and changed everything. Do-Hyun looked at her. The alien queen. The ruler of 700 worlds. The lonely creature who had never known kindness until a human scavenger found her dying in a crashed ship. I am not good at grand titles, he said. I am not good at politics or speeches or power. I know. I will probably embarrass you in front of important people. Probably. I do not know how to live in a palace. I am used to ruins and basements and being alone. Yera moved closer. Her face was inches from his. Her breath was warm and strange and wonderful. Then we will learn together, she whispered, because I do not know how to not be alone. I do not know how to care about someone without fear. I do not know how to touch without meaning power or politics. Her voice trembled. But I want to learn. With you. Do-yoon reached up and took her hands from his face. He held them gently, firmly, the way he had held them in the basement shelter on Earth. Then we will learn, he said, together. And in the cold, beautiful palace of an alien empire, surrounded by stars and power, and the endless darkness of space, two lonely souls found warmth in each other. Far below in the streets of the capital, Valorians stopped and stared as a new announcement spread across every screen and speaker. The Queen had declared Earth a protected world. The Queen had taken a human companion. The Queen had called for the beginning of a new age, one where touch was not forbidden and connection was not weakness. Some were angry, some were afraid, but some, especially the young, felt something stir in their hearts, a memory of something they had never known, a hope for something they had never dared to want. And across the galaxy, other species heard the news and wondered about the strange, soft, impossibly stubborn creatures called humans. The species that had been dismissed as primitive. The species that could barely travel between their own planets. The species that had nothing to offer an empire that spanned 1,000 stars. Nothing except kindness. Nothing except courage. Nothing except the simple, powerful act of touching a wounded stranger with gentleness. It was enough. It was more than enough. It changed everything. And somewhere in the palace, a queen and a medic sat together on a balcony, holding hands and watching the stars. They did not speak. They did not need to. They were not alone anymore. And that was the only thing that mattered.